It's Texas football talk
from those who wore the burnt orange.
Welcome to Longhorn Lowdown. Now here's Todd Hunt, Stevie Lee, and Stu Myrick.
Welcome to another edition of Longhorn Lowdown, a special Monday edition on a very rainy Monday here in the ATX. And before we get going, all of our thoughts, prayers, best wishes to everybody on the Texas coast as Tropical Storm Beta makes its way towards Rockport and Gulf and Corpus Christi and such. So please be safe. Stevie Lee is, I would say, on assignment, but no, I think he's doing either a family visit. Oh, he was helping his dad move. His family moved in Shreveport. So Todd Hunt, myself, Stu Myrick, and joining us on the virtual couch this week or tonight, gentlemen that I've gotten to know over the last several years through my work with the Horn, and just a fantastic individual. He's the man responsible for all of every media person that is in Austin and every media person that covers Texas and the Big 12. He makes sure that they get what they need. Even it might not be what they want, but they get what they need. And he is one of the best in the business. It is great to welcome in the Associate Athletic Director at the University of Texas, the man that we get to see all the time at different things. John Bianco, how are you, man?
I'm doing great. I appreciate you guys having me on. I was laughing thinking about your intro and saying it's what you need. I'm a huge Twilight Zone fan, so there's an episode where that's what they talk about. It's not what you want, it's what you need. And I actually do say that a lot to the media.
Yes, I know. I've heard. Believe me, I've heard it all. And but man, it's funny because like as sometimes you have to tell the media and the different reporters about certain things. Yet you are one of the most respected individuals in your field across the country, and I know that hearing from some of the guys I get to work with on an occasional basis, and it not just it's all across all medium, radio, television, print, you name it. And so it's really good to get to talk to you here tonight. How is Monday is always active for you because that's press conference day in the fall. So give me an example. Give me kind of the typical day in the life, or Monday in the life for John Bianco during football season.
I made a rookie mistake. I left my emails open, so I'm quitting them right now so that they don't make that beeping sound on you. I didn't have me to tell me what to do.
Exactly.
Yeah, typical Monday now is completely different. We spent so much of the offseason working with our friends at Longhorn Network on figuring out how we could do a virtual press conference on Zoom that would actually look like a TV press conference. So Monday press conference is a kind of launches the week. We do Coach Herman on Mondays and players on Tuesdays, and then coordinators on Wednesdays. So it's Monday's pretty hectic, getting ready for the game week. We spend a lot of time Sunday pulling together all your notes and all your prep work and get ready for everything to roll on Monday. I'll tell you what, though, after 6 months of no games, no nothing, I am really enjoying being back into a game week routine, so that we need to make this last as long as possible. It's nice to at least see people virtually, to talk to them that way and to share some of the stories of what's going on. But Monday's a pretty hectic day.
Yeah, I know just a little.
Well, John, let's get this started. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Todd's not going to waste any time. He's jumping right in.
Oh no, I want to get in there and ask some good stuff. So, John, as Stu mentioned, you are known nationwide as the man behind the men over the last 2-3 decades. My thing is, I want to understand John, where he grew up. What makes you you? So, tell us a little bit about you're growing up and where you're from, and because I have no idea where you're from, to be honest with you. So I kind of want to know how you grew up and what's going on with you and how you got to be John Bianco for the University of Texas.
Yeah, that's kind of the secret to make sure that people are talking about the people that you're encouraging them to talk about, and not you. So it's really hard to be in. And Stu, you would know this, to be in this side of the camera, this business, and we're not really good at talking about ourselves. But I grew up in a small town in upstate New York, and played basketball and ran track most of my life. Went to college and ran track at a Division III school in college. Love sports, just like you guys. Watched every bit of it I could watch, and coaches became my mentors. So I honestly think that's one of the biggest reasons why I tend to connect with the coaches and the student athletes, is that they're the ones who've kind of taught me how to do the job. When I went to college, I was running in a track meet, and the coach said that it was taking forever to get results. And he was like, "Can you just go up in that press box and figure out why it's taking him so darn long to get results?" So I went up, met the guy who does my job at Baldwin Wallace College in a small school in Northeast Ohio. And that was my first introduction to it. I had, I wanted to find a job that I could stay in sports. I thought I might get into coaching. Well, once I figured out that, professional basketball or the Olympics weren't in my future, I decided that I wanted to find something to stay in sports. So I had no idea this business even existed. I grew up watching stories and watching games and reading about every possible thing I could read about. Really enjoyed learning the stories behind the people that played sports. So finding out that there's somebody that works kind of in between that and cultivates those stories and helps pitch those to the media, it was really cool to discover that when I got to college.
Right. You got
So
started.
how many siblings do you have?
I've got 5 brothers and sisters. So I had an older brother, ironically, an older brother who I played sports with most of my life. He was a couple of years older than me, so bigger than me most of my time growing up. So I really had to figure out a way that I could beat him at something. So that's when I kind of discovered statistics. So if I could come with some percentages, I wasn't ever going to beat him. But once I started being able to catch up to him size-wise, I got away from it a little bit. But we played wiffle ball, and I'd have the batting averages figured out, how to do on base percentage, all the stats, to make sure that I had something that would give me some small victory, since I wasn't going to beat him in the actual game. But he probably is the one who gave me the passion for figuring out a way to manage the numbers and tell that side of the story. But I grew up in a big family.
Yeah. Were you strong? Were you strong in math in high school and college?
It's funny you say that, because I have this conversation with my daughters all the time who hate math, and I hated math too, and I was terrible at math. Geometry, any of the algebras, no way. I didn't think that there was any chance that I would. I had zero interest in it, and then I got into this business and realized that I probably could have been good at math if I actually applied myself to it. But especially if there were classes in statistics, or classes that helped you utilize some of the things, or a lot of times, I'm sure you guys ran into it, teachers that push you away from always doing book reports or stories on sports and that kind of stuff. It's, expose yourself to something else. And it's like, no, I'm going to find a career that I can do this for the rest of my life. And I got lucky and did.
Exactly. You started at UT in 1992. You were an assistant SID, or sports information director, excuse me. You handled track and field. You were the media coordinator for the Texas Relays. What brought you to Texas?
It's interesting. I went to the small school, and when I was there and I discovered that this is what I wanted to do, I still wasn't completely sure if I was going to try to be a grad assistant and go into coaching, or get into a field that is associated with coaching in some respect. So I decided went to the COSIDA convention, the Sports Information Directors Convention, my senior year. The SID at Baldwin Wallace put me in his car and dragged me there. And I interviewed with it. They used to do it was almost like speed dating, the interview sessions they had there for intern positions. So basically you get to go through, you sign up for the schools you want to do interviews with. You go through one after another. They hit you with a barrage of questions, and you just kind of keep moving on to the next. And I met a bunch of people and realized when I went through that, even though most of those people called me and told me I finished second and sent me my rejection letters, that's kind of when I realized I wanted to do it, because I'm talking to the SID at Notre Dame and Arizona State, Michigan, who became a lifelong friend, Ohio State, all the schools since I was from the Midwest that I obviously had the most interest in, and I finished second in pretty much every job. I still have the file full of about 200 letters. I got rejection letters because everybody got a letter from me and a phone call from the SID I worked with. And the one opportunity, I wanted to get into a place where I could work at the highest level. I didn't want to be at a small school. My goal was to, I didn't want to be in professional sports necessarily, but to be at as high as I could get. And I had an offer from a school named Longwood College, which you probably have never heard of. It's a Division II school in Virginia, but you probably have heard of Jerome Kersey, who was with the Portland Trail Blazers. He just had gone into the NBA, and I was like, oh wow, go work at the place that Jerome Kersey went to school at. It must be a big time place.
Right.
I accepted that job, and I was getting ready to go there, and literally, and people told me this, that when it rains, it pours, the offers will start coming in. Well, some fools turned down the $300 a month and free meal plan that they give you as an intern in sports information, where you basically don't make anything, but you gain a ton of experience. So the SID at Michigan called me, and the SID at Arkansas offering me their positions. The Michigan one, I was going to have to wait a little bit. The Arkansas one was immediate. He asked me how soon I could be there, and I said, how far is it? So jumped in my car, drove down and so my first internship was at the University of Arkansas. And this is a long way to get to the lead that you asked. So how did you end up at Texas? Well, when I was at Arkansas, that's when I discovered, I knew of Texas. I didn't, I went there and when I was at Arkansas, I worked over at the Texas Relays for that. But so I got a little exposure to it. But the people at Arkansas are the ones who told me Texas is the place you have to work. They didn't tell me that, but their actions did. They beat Texas in football that year, and they basically shut down the city for a couple of days. Their hatred of Texas showed me that there's got to be something extra special about this place. So it became like one of the 5 schools that I kind of said, if I ever have a chance to work at Texas, that's a Texas, Notre Dame, Michigan, Ohio State were probably the 4 schools I kind of always thought I'd love to end up at after I worked at Arkansas. I like to say after I served my 10-month sentence and they let me off on good behavior, because that was a life-changing moment. So I went from Arkansas, worked at Fresno State for a year as an intern, and then got my first full-time job at the University of Cincinnati, where I was for a couple of years. Mm-hmm. I was working with basketball and football at Cincinnati, and then basically the bottom rung job at Texas came open, and I heard about it and reached out, and I basically had everybody I know bombarding Bill Little and Dave Saba, who was here at the time, to get my foot in the door so I could start from the bottom. Even I felt like I'd worked my way up a little bit, but I didn't care. I was willing to, I didn't care if you wanted me to just make copies in the press box. If I had a chance to show the people at the University of Texas what I could do, I knew it was the kind of place I wanted to be at.
That's pretty awesome that you came in. And so 92, when you came aboard, that was my senior year in football, right? So the fall of 92 was my senior year. And
Yep.
Then of course I graduated the next year. So I didn't get, although you started when I was there, I didn't really get to do much with you. But in the last few years you've been at the University of Texas, you've, like I said, been the man behind the curtain. And what do you say about all the student athletes you've had come through your tenure? I mean, that's pretty awesome group of folks that you've had a hand to touch and direct, because a lot of those guys see you as a guidance counselor, so to speak, in life as well. It's not just the media, it's not just, oh, the coach is this, but it's really you and how you interact with them, with the media, things like that. So give me a perspective on that.
Yeah, actually, I think one of the reasons I got in the business is because both of my parents were educators. So I grew up around a family of teachers. Even though school wasn't my top priority, I didn't do as well as I probably should have. which was weird with the parents that are teachers, but I did learn how important it is to listen to people and to play a role and have an impact in their life. I watched what they did with students and what they did raising a larger family. So I think that played a big role in me wanting to have, when I got in this business, and why I would want to work at a college level. And I really have never pursued working in any pro sports, because I like having an impact on their lives. And it's so much fun watching them grow up. It's so much fun watching a guy who comes in. One of my favorite stories is when I made Colt McCoy do his first interview, and it was after his redshirt year, and he's in a battle for the quarterback job. I convinced Coach Brown to go against his rule because he hadn't played in a game yet. But I was like, we don't know who the quarterback's going to be. We got to put. It was Jevin Sneed and Colt.
Right.
And
I remember that. I remember that whole scenario. That's pretty cool.
Colt sits down for the interview, and you've seen it, Todd, and you've seen it too. The huddle comes around him, and it's, we gave him space, so we had to set up like a press conference setting, but more of a huddle than a setting. And camera lights beam on. He's stammering and nervous and and we talked a lot about it beforehand. He was ready for it, but not ready for it because he had no idea. The guy was
you can never be ready for that kind of stuff, man.
He walked he stood up off the stool, and he looked at me. He said, "That was fun, Mr. Bianco, but I'll never do that again." And I remember looking at him and saying, first of all, I'm John, I'm not Mr. Bianco, but you're going to do this a lot, because I think your goal is to be the starting quarterback at Texas. And so this is going to be part of your life. And to think that he went from that to the guy who walked in by his senior year into press conferences and said, "Hey, remember what I told you Saturday? Remind me of those 5 or 6 points." And he sit down and just, bridge to everything he wanted to share and wanted the media and the fans to know about. I mean, as good as I've ever been around it at taking in information and sharing it and making sure that everybody really knew and saw what was going on. But the look on his face of terror after his first media availability was priceless.
Well, you probably figure out that he probably had more people around him during that media availability than live in his hometown. So I can understand that completely. So, tell me about the first time you met Bill Little, because Bill Little is, he's the legend. He's the master. He has forgotten more about sports information than any of us will ever know. But tell me about that first encounter.
Yeah, the thing you could tell from Bill from the get-go, just that the reason he was so good at the business is because he listened and learned and heard stories. And when I came in, even just for the job interview, for basically an entry-level job here, how much he cared about my background, about me, what was important to me, how I would fit. And you don't realize he's quizzing you to see how well you're gonna work with the student athletes and the coaches, and are you gonna take the time to really care and get to know them, and do you fit? Because the one thing about the University of Texas is that our standard when it comes to communications and working with student athletes is, we like to think it's as high as anywhere. And that's because we really care about them. We want to see them grow and mature. We want to play a big part of their college experience. So I just remember him asking me stories, and I'm looking at him and thinking like, yeah, I want to hear your stories. But it didn't take long. He started sharing them after a little bit. But the thing that he was so good at, and I hadn't been exposed to, mainly because of the places I'd worked, and then I was at a small school for most of the time before that, but just the way he connected with people, and the Texas hospitality, and how to do things right, and how to show people you care and show people they're important. And the PR side of things, I could never repay him for the lessons I learned from him. I mean, I still talk to him probably every other day. So there's anything comes up, I'm going to reach back and ask him his thoughts on it. But the whole setup at the way he did business and the opportunity he provided was, I mean, awesome. I I came in to do swimming and track and field in the Texas relays and to help out with football. But as soon as I was able to show where I could bring some value to helping out with football, he gave me every opportunity to be involved. And, you know, when we take the media out for dinners and things, he let me come along so I could start meeting some of those people. And he was terrific.
He is.
Well, speaking of, I was going to say, speaking of, you know, situations, you've been with Mac, you know,
Charlie
Strong, and now you're with Herman.
Now
All right.
Yeah.
All four different coaches, different coaching styles, right? Different mannerisms. So I want you to kind of give us a collective, a little bit about each one of those things you've learned from each one of those coaches along the way that's kind of made you, you know, form to who John Bianco is today.
Mackovic's there's no question with and he's another one I stay in touch with. I mean, I appreciated everything that he did for me, and it really gave me the first opportunity to work directly day to day with football. But I remember coming to him and talking to him about a couple of requests we had that I probably shouldn't have even brought to him. And I was worried about how I was going to tell this person no. And he looked me square in the face and was like, be firm and fair. You just always need to be firm and fair in everything you do. If you don't get outside the lines on that and you're consistent with how you do things, you'll always be respected. And it's funny. I think that all the time when I'm responding to questions or requests that people have and things like that, just make sure that you're firm and fair. So I have Mackovic's voice in my head saying it too. So it's like, be firm and fair.
I do remember that voice. That voice is kind of crazy. Yes.
Yes. And you know, he was good because technologically, he was ahead of his time when it came to how he wanted to run things and wanted to be, you know, he was huge on expanding the how we handled the media guide and the photos we used to make sure that we captured everything. This is history. This is important. There was a side of him that a lot of people didn't really get to see because he didn't let them all the time see it. But also remember when he was going through some of his tougher times and when things weren't going well in '97, and I'm 28 probably at that time, 27, 28. So I'm, you know, stubborn. I'm going down with the ship kind of an attitude that you have because you get to know a person. You know, Todd, if somebody's getting after you, I'm going to take up for you.
Right. Exactly. I totally understand that.
He called me in and he said, John, I appreciate all of your support. You're great. Keep doing what you're doing, but make sure you take care of yourself. Don't do anything that puts yourself in a bad spot. And to think that he had the wherewithal and also the, you know, that he could let his ego down to say that to somebody who was essentially going to stand in front of a bullet for him. Not that it changed how I did things, and I wasn't being rude to people or anything, but it did make me, you know, make sure I was thinking through every situation and figuring out the best way to present him and to present the university and work together to, you know, to handle a very trying situation. Because that year was one with, especially when you have a Heisman Trophy candidate who's, if you remember, was saying that he wasn't going to come back if Mackovic didn't come back. So it was an interesting time.
That was crazy to hear that from Ricky. That was kind of nuts. But you know, then you have, okay, he leaves. Now you got Mac Brown, totally different personality.
Yes.
How did that change? How did that make a change for you?
I think with Mac, it's just his people skills and the way he treated everyone from the, you know, no matter what you could do for it didn't matter. It didn't matter if you could do something or you couldn't. He was going to treat everybody fairly, and he also really understood and respected the power of the brand. And, you know, bringing Coach Royal back in, my first few years at Texas, I was around him a little bit, but just being around him more because, you know, Mac brought him back into the fold, and just hearing the stories and, you know, all the wisdom that Coach Royal was sharing with Mac. A lot of times I was standing right there absorbing it too. And it was funny because as Mac was saying, he'd been dipped and vaccinated. He's not from Texas. So he got here as quick as he could. And you've been dipped and vaccinated 9 times out of 10. If I was in the room too, he was nudging me too. He's like, you too, New Yorker.
That's right. Because Daryl Rowland, man, you're among royalty right there. Yeah,
Yes.
Daryl Rowland, Mac Brown, and they're telling you all these stories about history, the past. I've only been in a couple of situations with Mac Brown over the last few years when he was here, but man, I really enjoyed the time I spent with him. The short time I even had a conversation with his wife, but yeah, he is. I think he's one of the best that ever came through. I mean, besides Royal, but yeah, he's one of the best coaches overall. I just love this guy. I never played for him, but love everything about him.
And we're seeing it now with him at North Carolina. He's showing what we all knew those 16 years.
Yeah, and the greatest thing about Mac is just the relationships he built with his players. I mean, they would do anything, totally respected him. And the speech he made in the locker room after that championship game that's been, talked about forever is so him. I mean, in that moment for somebody to grasp it to the level he did and to share something that, is impacting those guys' lives today. Don't make this, the best day of your life. Your kids, you're going to get married, you're going to do things after football. This is a really special moment, but don't make it the best day of your life. And even though it's the best day of the life for all those guys, it's one of the best they get to say. But he had such a way of connecting with people. And I've never worked. There's nobody out. He's the first person I'll call anytime I'm in a situation where I've got a question or just want to bounce something off of somebody. And but there's nobody who will take up for you, support you, have your back more. But that makes it. People would always say that he must have been the easiest guy in the world to work for. Well, the easiest guy in the world to work for is the guy that you don't really like working for. When you really love him,
why do you say that?
When you really love and respect somebody, every waking moment of my day, I wanted to make sure that I pleased him. I wanted to make sure that I was helping. What have you done for Texas football today? I'm going to be thinking about that every second because that's what, Mac's thinking about. And he really, really appreciated the value of public relations and communications. And it's funny when you said it earlier on, Stu, that our role sometimes some places it gets perceived in a different way, or that they think of you as like the stat guy or the news guy or the notes guy. But if you're working with a coach that really gives you the opportunity and you're working closely with the kids and the team, there's nothing like the value that the role that you can play. And he allowed me to spread my wings, so to speak, and really be involved in everything, and asked my opinion and thoughts on things that were far beyond just media relations things. We built an unbelievable relationship. He is just he is an awesome human being. But that's what I'm saying. It's like, if somebody that you don't have a ton of respect for, like they say in with the best leaders are those that you follow because they could do it just as well as you could do it, but you also believe in everything they're doing and saying. And the ones that have positional power you're just following because that's their job to tell you what to do, and you better do what you're supposed to do. It's not quite the same. But Mac was the type that there wasn't going to be anything that you wouldn't want to do to help make things better, to help the program be better.
And then you have Strong come onto the place, right? So, and then you got Patterson. So DeLoss Dodge was the first few years we were here, right? Then you have Patterson come in, then you have Strong come in. That's like a whirlwind tornado situation, I thought personally. But so you talk about Mac now. I want you to talk about Strong a little bit, and I'm going to come back to the ADs, right? Because that's a whole different ball game. But we'll come back to them in a second. But yeah, so you got Mac is leaving, Strong's coming in. How tough was that?
That's a tough transition just because of how difficult it was in the stretch run for Mac. And you want to make sure that the person that comes in understands what Mac is built here. And, so many people want to say that they're going to change this or change that or fix this or talk about how bad it was. And it's like, we had some tough years, tough times, not really tough years, but tough times and games and things. But Charlie was great. I mean, he came in and he had so much respect for Mac and the program. And I really think that the thing with him is it just was, the timing just wasn't right. I loved working with him. He was a, great person. Team really respected him. He cared deeply about the program and about the people, and grew a lot in the position. I mean, I know he even feels like today that he doesn't regret having come to Texas because he grew as a person and a coach. And the kids just absolutely loved playing for him. I don't know why. It's one of those ones you look back at. I can't pinpoint why it didn't work.
John, would you say that there might have been a small case of kind of the old saying, you never follow Sinatra, you follow the guy that followed Sinatra?
Yeah. No, there's definitely
kind of accurate.
Yes, there's definitely that is not that's, you don't want to replace Mac Brown, and you don't want to replace him in the way it kind of ended with him, where it's, there's some bitterness and some struggles. But yeah, there's no question that was difficult. It was weird because there was so many of those games and situations, and he had a few of them that turned out positive, but for the most part, it's like everything that we turned to gold. We had a note package filled with all kinds of come from behind victories, fourth quarter comebacks, great quarterback play. And we didn't get it consistently for a few years there. And not going to win if it's like that.
That's true. That's very true.
And then you have, that short-lived, 3 years, I think it was Strong. Mm-hmm. And then Herman comes in. So I thought you would like Herman because we'd like Herman more because, he's kind of like Mac Brown, a little bit different, but kind of like Mac Brown, the team and how he pushes people. Am I correct in that?
Yes. And very, the one thing that, because Mac's so friendly and says all the right things, but the one thing that those two have in common is they're very direct. Like that there's nothing like working for somebody that you always know where you're going to stand and they're going to shoot straight with you. And there's not going to be any gray area. You can talk very honestly and directly with them. But that's when I kind of realized that I was officially old, though, when Tom came back, because he was a GA in 99 and 2000. And I remember, the GAs are, you get to know them a little bit, but you're not around them enough that you usually get to spend enough time with them. And I just remember when he got hired, we stayed in some kind of touch, but I was like, well, thankfully I must not have irritated him at any point, because he was happy to see me, but I kept elbowing him that first couple of days and being like, can you believe this? I still remember Coach Royal telling, I want to make sure I remember the story right, telling, and fortunately we're on the internet, so I can say it the right way too. When he was telling Coach Brown about what the difference between a fairy tale and a Texas fairy tale is. A fairy tale starts with once upon a time, and a Texas fairy tale starts with you ain't gonna believe this shit, brother.
That's good.
Yes, exactly.
So I kept elbowing
exactly
Tom and being like, all I can think of is I'm looking at you, and Coach Royal had passed, so it's like all I can think of is Coach Royal would be looking at me saying, you ain't gonna believe this shit, brother. The GA's the head coach. But it's crazy. I do remember how intense he was, though, when he was a GA on the staff, and the fact that he's coming from this small school as a GA, that he wasn't afraid to speak up, and whether they agreed with him or not, Greg Davis would have to calm him down sometimes. But he was so passionate about football. That's just such a cool story. I mean, a guy who virtually cuts his teeth at a place getting the opportunity to be the head coach.
Right. Well, and that's another similarity because Mac in his younger days was very intense, and
Yes.
he talks a lot, like when he was at Tulane and other places. He was very intense. He would blow up, and he had to learn how to kind of mellow out some by the time he came to Texas. So, talk for a second about the decade of the 2000s, because you know Texas has such a rich history. But you look at that 10 years with everything that athletics accomplished between the national championships, football, basketball, the Final Four, all the stuff that happened in all the Olympic sports. You'd be hard pressed to find a school that could string 10 years together like Texas did. What was it like to be in your position during that time?
Oh boy, amazing. I mean, it's you now I'm chasing the Holy Grail, because I gotta have another one of those runs before I'm gone. But I kind of, it's funny because I remember being on one of our senior staff retreats with the loss back in I guess at that time it would have been the mid to late 90s, and there, we had across the board in some sports, we had some coaches that were getting older, they were going to retire, and then we were just having the transition to Augie, Rick, and Mac, and we were talking about that. How are we going to embrace this? What do we do? How do we really magnify the exposure of these new guys? And I mean, thinking back to that and what those three accomplished at our place in the 2000s, it's we just needed a fourth for the Four Horsemen, but they were I mean, that run and the players and the kids coming through in all those sports, it's fun for me now too, because speaking of Bill, when he got me on the Hall of Honor Vintage Committee I want to say it was like after the championship run or something about that time, and I've really enjoyed that, because that's where you work with selecting the vintage honorees, which Todd's almost vintage at this point in his life.
Yeah, but I'm not an All-American, so I'll never get those honors.
But but being a part of that, and now we're at the point where I'm in those committee meetings, and they're talking about the ballot. Each sport has their spokesperson, and there's some people on sports that even look at me now sometimes and wink, like, should we think about so and so? And I'm like, so many of those guys now are on the ballot from that 2000 era. And I kept saying it as people were getting put on and voted on and things like that. It's like, you better be ready to hang on, because from 2000 to 2010, we're going to fall behind. We can't possibly put all, I mean, when you think of the swimming Olympians, the track Olympians, the football, baseball, basketball, it's crazy. That era was amazing.
Yeah, it's kind of like that wide receiver glut that there used to be for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. That you had so many wide receivers that were eligible, and it was so hard to try to get any of them in because they'd all cancel each other out. And then finally, a couple of them got in, and they finally kind of broke that seal and was able to get some in. And I got to imagine that's going to be the same way between the football alone. You look at all the individual awards that football got during that decade, between the Walter Camps and the Nagurskis and the Maxwells and everything. It's hard to imagine. Like I said, it's hard to imagine any school with a string like that, a 10-year run as incredible as that.
Yeah, and that's for when you mentioned the individual awards. That's probably, even the guys who the being a finalist is such a huge honor. That's kind of like the pinnacle in our business. It's so cool going on the trips with the guys when they're a finalist for those awards, and being around them because you obviously win the award on the field, but how you handle yourself off the field, how you handle yourself in the media, how you handle yourself around those awards committee people that will come for visits and things like that is such a huge piece of it. And that's something from the day they arrive on campus that you're preparing them for because of the media exposure they get here, because of the conversations you're having with them, and understanding the importance of an award they might be up for. But that's definitely one of the coolest things. And we really did a great job with every time a guy was a finalist for an award, I still remember having the conversations with guys in the just after your stage, Todd, you know, the 95s, the Pat Fitzgeralds and James Browns and
Yep.
Dan Neals, all those guys. The Walter Camp Award does an All-American team, and you know, you're training for the NFL, so you don't really want to go to the All-American event necessarily, or you might not have time for it. And just really pressing those guys to understand the value of it, because you're paying it forward. You're building relationships with these committees, and when you're around them, don't forget to tell them about, you know, Leonard Davis and Mike Williams. Don't forget to tell them about the next group of guys that you know. And those guys all did such a great job. And when you think about not only the team honors, but the individual awards we got in 2000 throughout the 2000s, like Aaron Ross was on no one's radar for an All-American in 2006. I mean, barely, they knew who he was. He's a good player. But Michael Huff won the Thorpe in 2005 and told anybody that would listen that you better look at Michael Griffin and Aaron Ross. We got two guys you're going to be battling for these national awards next year. So it's really cool when you see that kind of a buy-in and support from them, and understanding of the greater good. But 2000, it's just, you know, TJ Ford, the national players of the years we had in baseball and basketball and Olympians. It's quite a run.
You're one of the few people that I know that's ever gone to, you know, to all the award ceremonies. So you were in New York when they did the Heisman. Is it in New York, right?
Yep.
So how many times you've gone? Twice now, right? Because you did it with Colt McCoy and Ricky Williams.
4 times.
Oh, that's right.
Twice with Colt. That
Colt.
He should have won in 2008.
Yes.
Probably should have won in 2009. Vince in 2005, and then when Ricky won it, I'll tell you what, that 1998 will forever be, you know, one of those years where, when you think about everything involved in that year, with Mac's first year and the role that Ricky played in helping launch us in the recruiting game and across the board. But that was the most stressful year of my life, because Ricky Williams came to Texas and he wanted to win the Heisman Trophy. It was a clear goal. I mean, the email address was Heisman@utexas.edu. So he talked about it a lot, and that was a cool era of the Heisman where you had to have there was a build up to it. You couldn't show up as a freshman or sophomore and win the Heisman back then. It was like, here's how you do it. Here's the game plan, Ricky. Let's just consistently make sure you get exposure, tell the stories, let people get to know who you are and everything. So working with him on Heisman campaign stuff was so much fun. But that year when he decides to come back for his senior year, and, you know, obviously getting us back on the winning track as a team is a huge part of it, but also, you know, the hopes of, you know, winning the Heisman Trophy. Every time he took a snap and got tackled, I'm watching like I'm his dad. Get up, wait. I don't know if you all remember. There was a game then when a Baylor defensive tackle literally stepped on his leg on purpose, and he hobbled off the field, and the stadium just went dead silent.
Oh, I was there.
Remember that? And then he ran back out I don't normally, I stay up in the press box usually at halftime, because I'll be working with the TV crews and things. But I went down because I was like, I got to see what's wrong. If this guy broke his leg, I'm going home. So he didn't. He had a big gash on it. But when he charged back on the field and the stadium went nuts, that was such a cool moment. But I remember that, just, you know, knowing that how important that was to him, and the opportunity he had, that it was a joy watching, but it was really hard to watch. He won it. Cool. I really think he won over half the voters when he sat through probably 30 minutes of interviews after running for 37 yards against Kansas State, when they stacked 11 guys in the box and basically let a major throw deep balls, and we got beat pretty bad up there. But how he responded to that And we had a talk in the locker room before he went out and talked to the media, and him understanding why he needed to do it and just how he handled it. At the end of the day, that's when things, he had to come back, and it didn't hurt back-to-back 300-yard games and
Not at all.
what he had after that. But
And he broke the rushing record, the NCAA rushing record. Tony Dorsett was on site that day. I remember.
Yeah.
In fact, I remember seeing Coach Royal the day after, and we were talking about that, and he's going, I'm getting too old for games like that. So it was just one of those things. He was happy, but man, his heart was in his throat that day too. So I totally.
You remember the story when the all-purpose yardage record was the one that Ricky used to joke with Mac about, that he was going to break it, and Mac was like, no, and he was going to say, yeah, let me return a kick in the last game. And then when he got over 200 and even had broken the all-purpose yardage record too, he literally went up and slapped Mac on the butt. And he was like, I'm not going to need that kick, coach.
That's right.
That was
There,
cool.
and then there was the thing about so Bucky Godbolt tells us this all the time about how he didn't let Ricky get 1,000 yards his freshman year, and Ricky let him know that he's let him know that every year since then. He still reminds him today he could have had 1,000 yards as a freshman running back if it wasn't for Bucky. So
we told him.
I cussed Bucky about that too. So
we told him. They didn't want to hear us tell him that he's closing in on 1,000. You don't when you tap on the offensive coordinator's door and tell him that, and you're in a close game. I think it was 16-7 maybe at A&M. I think it was. It was pretty close. The last thing they were going to do was do one more toss sweep to try to get him to 1,000. But I think it's pretty cool. I honestly think it's pretty cool, and I've told Bucky this. It's really cool that he ran for 990 and didn't run for 1,000, because it's a truly authentic 990 yards. It's like,
it's true.
If we had faked it and you padded it to get to him 1,000,
it would have changed it a little bit outcome, I thought too. All right, so let's get back to the ADs, because this is kind of what I wanted to hear. So you have the Lost Dodds, the man, the myth for how many decades, right? And then, he's gone and replaced by Patterson, right? And then I forgot the gentleman who was after that, who was
Mike Barron.
Mike. Okay, so that's 3 different worlds, right? And now you have Chris, right? Love Chris to death, by the way. I can't wait to spend more time talking to him down the road when he has more time. But all right, you got all these 4 gentlemen. So let's start with working with DeLoss, because I had a chance to go talk to DeLoss in his office on more than one occasion about different stuff, student athlete stuff and former athlete stuff. So I love him to death. And then I never really had a chance to really talk to Patterson a couple of times, but it wasn't the same, right? And then of course you had the gentleman Mike came in. I didn't talk to Mike very much. Saw him a couple of times, had a couple of conversations, but nothing intimate or crazy. And then of course now you have Chris. So talk a little bit about that whole, working for each one of those guys and what they taught you and/or didn't learn or did learn.
Yes. No, DeLoss, I learned a lifelong lesson on the first day I met him, because he was big on anybody that they hired in the athletic department. He needed to meet them before they hired him. So I was doing my interview with DeLoss, and he said, I've heard great things about you. I mean, you come from great places. We know you're really, really talented. You're bright. You're going to be able to help us a ton here. One piece of advice: this is a big place. There's a lot of dynamics at play, history, tradition. Sit back for a year and listen, and then tell us what you think. It's like, you'll have a ton of ideas. We don't need to hear them until after you've spent a year understanding everything. And I tell virtually everybody I hired that same story, because nice. There's so many dynamics at play, and there's so many people that are talented and really good at their jobs, that it's important to not just start speaking up until you really understand it. So I always think about that too. And then the power of your words, when you think you're really important because you got this Longhorn on your chest, but when you say something and you're representing the University of Texas, you better have thought through every way you're saying it, when you're saying it, how you're saying it, where you're saying it. So you'd be in like NCAA basketball committee meetings or Big 12 meetings or anything like that. And you guys are old like me, so you'll know the reference. But DeLoss was like E.F. Hutton. You literally would sit through a meeting and people would be talking and they'd be talking about topics and issues and how we handle this, how we handle that. And that he has a thought. And then all of a sudden they'd get to the point where they really knew there needed to be a decision made, and they would turn to him, and he'd have, much like Coach Royal was known for, he will have compartmentalized everything, gathered all the facts, and very sensibly and very clearly told you what we should do and moved along. That when you think about those Augie, Rick, and that era, and Mac that we talked about earlier, having DeLoss as their sounding board and their leader, and how he advised him in a very intentionally unintentional way, where it's like he didn't force things upon them. He let them in a lot of ways make their own decisions, but he was influencing decisions because he knew what was best. But he is like the godfather. I can't even imagine, like when I came to Texas and I'm in my mid-20s, the opportunity of being exposed to, how fortunate was I? They were like, why don't you go down there and just work for maybe the best athletic director in the history of college athletics, and just watch what he does and see if you can get good at something.
Absolutely.
So he was tremendous, and to this day he's like Mac. He's if I have anything I really need to bounce off somebody, he's gonna have a great solution for it. And it's funny because I think the only reason I bring this up is it's like I went from working at a place at the University of Cincinnati where I was working with basketball and working with Bob Huggins, who was great to work with, but it was like high and low emotions. Like he was very, very high at times and then very, very low, and great to work with. So like he would be on the court literally tearing his team up and down. There was nothing like going to watch a Bob Huggins basketball practice, because it was the most intense thing ever. You felt like you needed to take a deep breath when you walked out, but he would walk off the court, and I'd be with the media and get the media ready for post-practice interviews. And he would walk over after basically having a shouting match or throwing, one of his guys throwing his jersey at him, Nick Van Exel quitting the team, something crazy, and walk over and just be like, hey, what do you guys need? Like, knew how to turn it on and turn it off. And so that was kind of what I was exposed to. And then come to Texas, and DeLoss is just like, he's always be never too high, never too low. And that's one thing I really learned from him, is to control your emotions and to be consistent and just never too high or never too low. And in my business, that's really hard, because when you're dealing with a whole lot of when you think about the beat group that we have, and there's nobody that has, 4 of the top 20 largest cities covering them on a daily basis, and the national exposure and the standards that we have and everything. So you really you can't let your emotions get too high or too low in any situation. So that's the other thing with DeLoss, is just like being even keel.
Well, for me, Patterson got my blood boiling. So, I met him, like I said, the first time I actually met him in person was down at the bowl game in San Antonio, because at that time I was president of Texas chapter. So anyway, so you transferred from even keel, and you got Patterson coming in here. So kind of talk about that transition and kind of, working with Patterson versus, DeLoss, of course.
That was the hardest part about that was that transition was tumultuous from the get-go, because he was the one in the seat when the Mac Brown stuff was going down. So that piece of it was uncomfortable from the start. But yeah, he definitely, if there was an opposite of this, he was much more of a roller coaster. And I don't know. I'm pretty sure he never heard the DeLoss Dodd's advice of we'll sit back and listen for a year and then tell people what you think.
No, he didn't. No, he didn't. So.
His philosophy was to tell people what they should think, and then they should listen to him for a year.
To him for a year. Right.
But yeah, that was an interesting stretch of time. But
and then you have Mike come in, because Mike's just like a good old Texas football boy, you know.
Yeah.
You know, he's going to tell you like it is to a degree, but he's going to be you know, nice about it.
Yeah.
Right.
The thing about Mike is he's, I mean, like, successful lawyer, so he's really smart at thinking through every angle of things, and having been a part of like some committees and things on campus and working with the athletic department, he was very familiar with it. So he just soothed a lot of, you know, everybody was on edge when he came in. Well, I wasn't there when he came in yet. I wasn't back yet.
Yeah, I was going to say, I knew there was the infamous break in there, and I remember it vividly because when there
was no break. John has always been John. There's no break in my mind anyway.
Well, okay, but officially there was a break, and I remember it vividly because when it happened, when the news broke, and this is where I was getting at with kind of the respect that you have, John. Twitter exploded, and it was all guys like me. Whether it was, you know, somebody, whether it was Kirk and said at the Statesman, or it was my guys at the Horn or the Zone, or it was the local TV guys, or if it was, say, Reese Davis and the guys at ESPN, to a man, every one of them called out Patterson, saying, dude, you made a huge mistake by letting John go. And then when Mike brought you back, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
So that was like, it was like righting a wrong. And I'd known a little bit of it, you know, not being in the every day there. I knew a little bit of it, you know, hearing whatever, but that's when I realized it was when I realized how much of an impact the right person in your position can make because of the respect and the admiration that was shown to you by those guys, by the people that I get to hang out with on occasion. So, you know, by the way, you know, I mean, we have much more volatile ways of describing Patterson's era. There are the conspiracy theories that say he was brought in to do the hatchet job and then leave. Whether that's true or not, why not? But it was a dark day. But you're right. When Mike Perrin, you know, assumed the interim role there, he was one of Coach Royal's players. He knew the culture. He knew the feathers that had to be smoothed. So I totally get that. And now the transition into Chris Del Conte, who is, you know, who's been just fantastic. I can imagine what it's like to work with someone with that kind of energy and that kind of passion, for the on the good side rather than others.
Yeah. What happened during the Patterson time, which I never quite understood, never really had a conversation with him about it, but it did remind me a lot of discussions with Mac and with DeLoss, and just because the way I carry myself in what I do is that it's obviously not about me. My job is to put everybody in the best light possible. So I've always tried to be consistent and helpful and gone above and beyond anytime I can when it comes to working with media. So that it's one of those things where you're like, a lot of times, especially men, we don't tell each other how much we care about each other or respect what we do. And it was, I most of the time we didn't have conversations like that. So there's so many people reaching out and being supportive. John Makovic was one of the first people who called me and encouraged me that, you know, it's going to be okay and to hang in there. And you know, there was a couple of job opportunities that came up that I thought about moving out of Austin, but, you know, my family and my wife, and we all loved it here. So we didn't want to leave. And necessarily. And DeLoss told me one day, he was like, I don't know if I would get rid of all that orange stuff just yet. And I never knew what he meant until 5 a.m. the day that Mike Perrin got hired, and my phone rang at 5 a.m. I still remember that. It was like, Mike must have been a farmer back in the day. And I didn't answer. I was like, I don't get these. I'm not working at Texas now. I don't get the 5 a.m. calls anymore. So, but he called that. We talked the first day he did the press conference, and he was like, I want you to come back. I want to talk to you about coming back, and I want to meet with you. So he reached out pretty quickly, and I really I appreciate him for that. And he did.
Listen, you should have never been gone. Bottom line is, you should have never been gone. The guy's an asshole, and I just wanted to say that publicly because I don't like him. And you can take that to the bank. I don't care if he knows me, he doesn't. I don't mean anything to him, and he means nothing to me, right? Yeah. So now you have the man, Chris.
Can I give you media training on that, Todd?
No, hey, I'm too old to be media trained.
I'm kidding.
I've been trying to put pointers towards him all this time, and he doesn't listen.
So we got Chris, and Chris is awesome. Like I tell you, I love talking to him. He's a good, just down to earth kind of guy. I love it.
Yeah, so, he is, and the great thing is, his familiarity with DeLoss and the place, and having been at Rice and TCU, to be watching from afar and understanding this place. And he takes the time to listen to people and hear their thoughts. But the thing that he does that, again, takes me back to DeLoss, that makes him so special, is he genuinely cares about the student athletes. Every decision he makes is based on, is it good for the student athletes? And the relationships he builds with them, and the effort he takes to be it. If he's in town and we're playing any sport, he's going to be there, and he's going to make sure that he sees the kids after the game, and he's going to make sure that he embraces them, supports them. The thing there's the one biggest thing he and DeLoss have in common is their people skills and the relationships that they build with the student athletes and coaches. He's clearly proven to be a really good head coach hire at this point with the ones he's brought in. I mean, what Edric Florial's done in track and field is tremendous. And the transition we had in tennis worked out really well in a very difficult situation. Vic Schaefer's going to do great things for women's hoops. He's that's another thing he has in common with DeLoss, is when he sets his mind on something, he's going to go get it done. So if he has those situations, he's going to go hire great people and allow those people to hire great coaches, so that the students athletes have everything they need. But man, he is a funny dude. And I love it because I was a 80s movie buff growing up, so I watched that's all I did was watch movies and Saturday Night Live. And I don't drag on our senior staff calls very often. I'll usually just tweet him a quick video link of something I was thinking about when he was talking, that's from Caddyshack or an SNL skit. He's and everything's off the cuff. I mean, he is, what you see is what you get. That is him. He is.
Yep, I learned that directly from him. So what sets Texas apart from all the other universities, what we do and what you do versus our rivals and other people in Big 12 or other top 5 SEC and ACC and other guys? What does Texas do different?
I think it's just the pride and passion people have for this place, this state, how important the University of Texas is to this state. I still remember when we won the national championship game and Max getting congratulations calls from people at A&M, and you would think the rivalry would prevent them from that. And, I think there's probably some Aggies that wore Longhorn hats that day in support of just that the state, we're proud that the state won a championship game. And that it's just, it's where it's located. It's the best college town in America, so obviously that people are drawn to it. The type of student athlete we get, you have to be serious about school. You have to be serious about everything you do. The guys I have the opportunity to work with, I mean, so many of them have impacted me far more than I could impact them, just because who in the world gets to work with two brothers like the Achos who when you're doing an interview, you like, I can't tell you how many times I told Dr. Acho, their dad and their mom, during awards things we were at and things, saying, hey, can I just send my kids to you for just for the summer? Can they just spend the summer with you? However you're teaching them. But I mean, we just, they're like it. It's probably corny, but I just think really special people end up here, and we get to work with them, and they love the place. They embrace the place. The way the guys are sharing their voices now in the social justice realm. I mean, our guys, when you think about it, that our guys are handling it the way they want to. I mean, they're expressing themselves in a way they want to, very professionally, and not getting caught up in emotions of things, but making sure that their voices are heard. The fact that when I'm standing there on the field when Ricky and Earl came to speak to the team about the field being named for them, and first they're thanking Dar Jamail and the Jamail family, which is still beyond me that somebody would take their name off the field for the cause, for the movement, essentially. And that Ricky and Earl are telling these young guys, these 20-year-old kids in the stands looking down at them, thank you. I mean, it's because of you and because of your willingness and because of the way you use your voice, the positive way you used your voice. They just named the field after two legendary Black football players. I mean, you get chills. Just that's the kind of stuff that happens at our place, though. That is so cool. And I mean, I'm at Longhorn Network's working on a story for the Julius Whittier statue, and how cool is that going to be when that thing's erected? I mean,
oh yeah, it's gonna be awesome. It started with me and Jimmy Saxton.
Yep. Oh yeah,
So
I've talked to Jimmy a bunch.
Oh yeah, it was pretty cool, man. I'm excited to see it go up. I really am.
Yeah. So I think that's it's so much powerful stuff happens where we're located, that there's no pro sports teams in our city. That's one of the top 10 largest cities in the country, and how fast it's grown, and everybody loves coming here. And the type of students that are on the campus that our student athletes are in classes with and learning from, and it's just a lot of great stuff comes out of here. And I just feel blessed to be able to tell the stories of it, honestly.
Well, that's why we got you on the show, because
yeah, I tell you what, that sums it up really well, and it is a special place. I've been lucky enough to be on campus, just as Todd's been lucky enough to wear the burnt orange, and having you there, John, to help guide these young men. It's really something special. And let me ask you this: besides everything, our current situation with the pandemic and everything, what's been your biggest challenge doing your job in the midst of this COVID-19 pandemic?
Probably the biggest challenge is not being around the student athletes and the coaches. Now I am, fortunately. I mean, I kind of look at August as my month of normalcy, because when I got back out around practice and stuff, and around doing interviews with the players and coaches, it made me, that's why I got in the business. I mean, I got in the business to help young people, and to be around young people, and to share their stories, and get to know the team. That's the greatest thing about working at a university, is you feel you're a part of the team. You play whatever small role you play to help everything be better. But it was so hard for those few months where we weren't around, where we weren't on campus, we weren't around each other, we weren't, seeing the great things that are going on. And when you think about all that was going on in our country at that time, and you're watching it from 30,000 feet above, just saying, gosh, I can't wait till we get back and get to really tell all these stories. But that was hard, and it's hard now too. I mean, as much as we needle each other, I really appreciate the core beat. There's not many people that have 15 or 20 beat reporters either. So we have a lot of different personalities. I like being around those guys. I like like introducing our kids to the student athletes to them so that they can, learn how to deal with the media and share their stories. And it's just so much different on in a virtual sense. It's so much different on the Zoom call. We found ways to do it, and I feel good about that. And there's probably things that we'll be able to utilize going forward. But I'm in a people business, and just not being around people is really hard.
I totally get it. Absolutely.
Well, I tell you, John, it's been a pleasure, my man. Been a pleasure again having you on, and talking with you. Like I said, I learned a lot about yourself, and I already knew you were an awesome guy before the call, so it was just confirming that altogether for me.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that. I know you're an awesome guy too.
Oh, whatever. You just saying it.
Aw.
And guess what? When I showed up on my first day on the job was the day 2 days were starting, and I walked out to the field to get introduced to Makovic. I was trying to figure out who was on the team for that whole first year. They'd send me in the locker room. Can you get Anthony Curl? Okay, which number is he?
42. Yeah.
Yeah, it was so I was drinking out of a fire hose that first year, but after that started to settle in. So
I can understand it.
It's been nice getting to know you after the fact.
Yes, no worries, my friend. It's a good stuff.
He is John Bianco. He is the Senior Associate Athletic Director at the University of Texas, the man in charge of media relations. John, it's been great to get to talk to you tonight, learn more about you. I personally will thank you for everything you've done for me. You're always incredibly kind. Every time I've been there for a press conference or something like that, you're always there ready to answer a question or help point me in the right direction, and I appreciate it. I know a lot of my colleagues feel the same way, and so all the best to you. Best of luck. I'm looking forward to us getting through a whole season. Let's have a great season and just enjoying everything, and enjoy appreciating the special environment we have at the University of Texas. So thank you so much, John. Make sure you follow him on Twitter at UT_Bianco. You can see all the stuff he does. He has some great tweets about what's happening at Texas in football, basketball, baseball, swimming, everything that happens at UT Athletics. This is the man that has the pulse of it. So, John, again, thank you so much. That'll do it for this week's tonight's Longhorn Lowdown. We'll be back to you. Our next episode, we'll talk to Roy Williams, number 11 in your program, number 1 in your hearts. But until then, make sure you follow Todd Hunt on Instagram at 94.hunt. Make sure you follow Stevie Lee. It's at Stevie J. Lee on Twitter and Stevie Lee 65 on Instagram, or it might be flipped. You can find him. Don't worry. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Stu Myrick. That's STEWMYRICK. And you follow the podcast on Twitter at Longhorn Lowdown, also on Instagram, and check us out on YouTube like you're doing now. Again, John Bianco, thank you so much. Todd, great job as always. We'll be back next time, but until then, hook 'em.
Hook 'em.